It is time to review more Badlands cards. Today we got some Demon Hunter stuff, including this crazy new legendary. It is Gunslinger Kurtrus, and he's a Highlander card, 5 mana, 4/6, Battle Cry. If your deck has no duplicates, fire 6 random 2 damage shots at minions in the enemy's hand. So you're dealing damage to cards in hand, and if you do sufficient damage, enough to kill a card in hand, it does kill the card. We saw the video. It kind of looks like it gets discarded. I don't think it would proc discard synergies, but it's kind of the same sort of animation. So basically, you know, if your opponent had 6 2-health cards in hand, you could delete 6 cards from their hand, which, you know, that specific scenario is not going to happen, but there are often, you know, low health battle cry sort of minions where you could just completely delete them from the game. Killing bigger, higher health stuff is going to be harder, not to mention if there's just like really high health stuff in hand, a lot of the Kurtrus shots might miss. Now, I do believe that damage will persist so that when the opponent plays that card, it does come out damaged. So it's not like you've totally wasted that damage, but I think you're ultimately really trying to kill that stuff to remove effects, to remove battle cries, those sorts of things. So this is probably countered a little bit just by Titans in general. A lot of the Titans have very high health pools where Kurtrus is going to send like 4 damage into a Titan or something, and it's not going to feel like a particularly relevant play. And then he might miss other cheap stuff in hand as well. But from time to time, you know, this could line up to kill some of those high value, low health targets that your opponent is sitting on hand, just hasn't had time to play yet, or maybe saving up for a key moment. Also decks that just don't run a lot of minions in general and are very spell based, but have some kind of like key minion in hand. You know, if they filter down to a Lady Sif, for instance, Kurtrus might just be able to snipe that Lady Sif, kind of like a patchwork, deleting a card from the opponent's hand. So there are some pretty cool implications for what this can do, not to mention this is just a really cool flavor for a card. Like literally shooting through the opponent's hand is actually pretty awesome. Now, I think it's actually super hard to assess this card because, number one, is it good enough to kind of encourage a Highlander deck? Like, is this reward strong enough to encourage a Highlander deck? I'm not convinced personally that it is. I think there will be a lot of games and scenarios where this just doesn't really feel like it did much. Softens up a couple things, maybe kills a minion in hand, but it wasn't a great one. And you're not making much of a play otherwise. A 5 mana 4/6 just kind of coming down isn't going to feel great. So you've kind of compromised your entire deck basically for this effect. It has to pay off. It has to be good enough to make it worth it to run a Highlander deck. And I don't know if this disruption is enough. It may depend a little bit on certain metas where this is like guaranteed to go off and kill key things and remove really valuable combo pieces or something from the opponent's hand. Maybe this kind of rises in those moments. I think a vast majority of decks, though, will be annoyed by this, but it won't be enough that you wouldn't just run a different non-Highlander deck instead. So the opportunity cost basically is pretty high when you're looking at a Highlander deck specifically. That said, this mechanic is very, very fun. So even if the power level is a little low, I'm going to find excuses to play this. And I think that might actually be true for our next Demon Hunter Legendary as well. So moving on here, we got another legendary, Snake Eyes, a 3 mana 2/3 Naga with a really cool and flavorful effect. It's a battle cry, roll 2 dice, then discover 2 cards of those costs. Doubles get an extra discover. So I showed a couple of examples of the tokens here. Roll to 1, roll to 2, discover a 1-cost card, discover a 2-cost card. If you roll, 2 1s, for instance, you get to discover a 3rd 1-cost card. So at a baseline, this gives you 2 cards of varying costs, or sometimes you get 3 cards. They don't vary in cost, which could be kind of clunky, like getting 3 6s probably isn't all that helpful in most cases because it's just going to be too expensive to play all that stuff outside of like a crazy high value sort of game. But, you know, getting 3 1s or 3 2s or something might actually be pretty nice, being able to weave all of those different cards into play rather easily. But all in all, this is a value bomb. I mean, we've seen a lot of these like 3-cost discover a thing cards played for a single card. This gets you 3. The downside here is a lack of specificity. Number one, it's a big range of costs, of course, ranging from 1 to 6. it's hard to get something reliable. Like I need a cheap card right now, or I need a big value piece. It might whiff in many instances there. Number two, there is no specificity to this. It's not discovering you a spell. It's not, again, reining in the cost. It's not a minion specifically. So it's just going to be a complete grab bag for what you get. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of like garbage neutral minions taking up good slots in the discover. I think generally you'll get like one good class card, one bad class card, one kind of random neutral thing, and you'll feel like you don't really get to discover all that much because there's going to be one like super obvious choice that's the only decent card, which means it's not really going to be a home run. It's going to be stuff. And sometimes stuff is okay if you're playing in a Highlander deck and you just need cards, you just need plays. Sometimes stuff gets you there, but it's not going to be something that reliably advances a specific kind of game plan. It's not going to be something you can trust to fill your curve super easily. All in all, it's just a pile of stuff, which is, I think, going to limit this card. Only if you need absolutely absurd value are you going to play this. I mean, theoretically, we've got some Naga synergies here, because, of course, we're going to see some additional Naga in this video that kind of care about this, but only kind of. So all in all, it's a tough card, right? I think the pool of results is going to be pretty weak on average. That's going to limit this for a lot of people. I see this only at the bottom end of a Highlander deck at best, but really fun mechanic, a really cool flavor, great name, and maybe still some real fringe playability. So speaking of some of those Naga synergies here, we've got Load the Chamber, a 3-mana spell. It deals 2 damage. That can go face. And your next Naga, fell, spell, and weapon cost 1 less. So in total, you're getting this 3-mana return to you from Load the Chamber after you've played those 3 cards. Not probably super excited about the Load the Chamber turn itself. Obviously, a 3-mana deal 2 doesn't feel particularly efficient. It's going to be a little clunky to weave this into a turn, setting yourself up for later, but you could actually play 2 of these in a row. Notably, this is a fell spell. So the second one probably feels a lot better. And then you've got some 2-cost discounts on a weapon and a Naga, which might actually feel rather nice, just allowing you to take a kind of a mid-game swing after maybe playing this on turn 3 or a second one on turn 4. The possibilities are there. Now, that said, the cost discounts on this are a little honest to me, which I actually welcome from a design philosophy standpoint. We talked about this in a previous video. I'm glad that that's the case. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a crazy cost discount that feels unfair, but at the same time, it's still going to be hard for this card to keep up against a lot of the previous meta cards we have that do have crazy big cost discounts. And the down tempo turn you take spinning 3 on this feels pretty bad, and you're not able to recover that with a significant swing because you're only getting a 1-mana discount per card. Nothing is like going to 0, for instance, and allowing you to make a big play. I mean, obviously 1-mana card would go to 0, but you're not getting like a 3-mana chunk discount all at once on a single card to help you pull things back. So in other words, because this discount is kind of distributed across multiple cards, presumably distributed across multiple turns, in many cases, it's just not going to recover fast enough to perhaps make it worth it from a downside standpoint. So it's fine, if you're running enough spells and enough Naga, like, sure, this might just slice enough different ways that it's worth it, but I don't think you're going to feel over the moon most of the time when you play this card, nor do these discounts set you up for like crazy levels of success. So next up here, we've got the Blind Eye Sharpshooter, another Naga synergy card, a 3-mana 1/5. After you play a Naga, deal 2 damage to a random enemy and draw a spell, then switch. So this is gonna look kind of familiar for our Naga Mage enjoyers out there of the world, where if you could chain together a Naga and then a spell and then a Naga and then a spell, you're going to get this 2 damage ping hitting over and over again, which can go face, notably, particularly on an empty board. That could be kind of crazy. The challenge here compared to something like Naga Mage is that you don't have infinite mana with this one. You're getting bonus damage and bonus draw, but eventually you're going to run out of mana. Unlike Naga Mage, which could kind of loop pseudo infinitely, basically. And that is going to put a bit of a cap on what this card can do. So basically, how quickly does the card draw and how quickly does the damage become worth it for one like this? I think it's okay. Card draw is good, of course, but I will say Demon Hunter has a sort of an abundance of card draw. So I think the question really just becomes like, how long do you wait on this to have enough mana to really get the use case out of it? Like if you have to wait till turn 10, for instance, to get enough cards sequenced together to make this feel worth it, that might be too late for it to make a real big impact. And the total damage output probably isn't that crazy high. I mean, with some like 0 mana spells weaved in and stuff and some 1 mana Nagas, you could definitely turn it into a bit of a machine gun of sorts. But I still worry about finding that sweet spot. Like I kind of want to play this in the mid game to kind of stabilize and just get things moving and draw some cards. I don't know if I want to wait until the end of the game to start bouncing all of this off like crazy and trying to use it as a sort of late game win condition. I just don't know that it does quite enough. Unlike something like Lady's Thinno, for instance, you can't really scale this damage up. It's just always going to be 2 damage. So it doesn't feel like it has that lethality, and it just feels a little clunky in the mid game because you can't get enough stuff down without the mana cheat of something like Naga Mage in that similar sort of vein. So just a little bit awkward here because of how much mana I think you have to commit to this one, and I'm not sure it's efficient enough from a payoff standpoint. At least as a damage card, maybe as a card draw engine, it's actually still pretty good. I guess I'm kind of bundling all this together, but maybe you just run this to draw cards and you don't care about the damage so much. It's just kind of a bonus. I guess in that case, I'm a little bit more hopeful for the card because it doesn't feel too bad there. Weaving a couple cheap spells and Nagas together, drawing 3 or 4 off of this doesn't seem totally crazy to do if your deck is full of that stuff. So some requirements a little bit on deck building perhaps, although you don't have to go crazy because this is drawing you the pieces that you need along the way. I guess I'm talking myself into liking this card as we go. I don't know. I kind of think this does do a lot. Ultimately, cards that do a lot are good, even if there are some issues with finding the mana to do all of it at once. It probably still just gets there. I've kind of come full circle on this card in one little review here. Moving on to Oasis Outlaw. It's a new 1 mana spell. This is kind of the perfect option, of course, for your Blind Eye Sharpshooter cheap spells like this to cycle. Discover a Naga. If you've played a Naga while holding this, reduce its cost by 1. Not even a 1 mana spell, it's a 0 mana spell. So this is in hand. It's a great option for your Blind Eye Sharpshooter to start cycling through. And then, of course, also gives you a Naga as well, which, of course, your Blind Eye Sharpshooter can get you a Naga, but ultimately Oasis Outlaws can get you a cheaper one, perhaps, that fits in even better. So this is starting to come together as this little like draw engine auctioneer sort of thing of sorts. I will say outside of that, Oasis Outlaws probably doesn't feel great. Just 1 mana discover thing has been fine in Hearthstone in the past. The Naga pool I don't think has a lot of like crazy big awesome hits though, compared to like Priest discovering a dragon in the old days. That probably felt better on average than just discovering a Naga in this case. It being a 0 mana option does help. You can just weave it into turns, but ultimately that's going to benefit most from proccing a card like this, as opposed to just feeling extra cheap on any given turn. It's probably not worth all that much, but it is still a cheap, efficient spell that plays towards this Naga game plan, so it looks like it could be a good piece of that deck building puzzle. Moving on here to the Parched Desperado. This is a 2 mana 3/2 Naga. Battlecry, if you've cast a spell while holding this, give your hero +3 attack this turn. So doing various Naga and Demon Huntery things here, plus attack. We got spell procs, we got a Naga to play, and it's pretty cheap too, which is again good for this little combination here. At 2 mana, that's not much. You can see yourself playing a couple of these in any given turn, going for +6. I think this also actually feels maybe decent outside of that full commitment. Like clearly this is only triggering on spells, and most decks are running spells, which means just using this as an early game board maintenance card. Like I get a 3/2 and I clear your 2-drop or 3-drop or whatever. That's probably not gonna feel bad. It's just a nice little swing on board early that still has that lethality potential if you draw it late or you didn't need it for that early board. You can still use this to push for damage as well. So ultimately, to me, this actually looks like a really flexible card that satisfies the Naga stuff, but doesn't have to be, because it is ultimately a spell based effect here and still has pretty good damage output. Moving on here, we've also got Fan the Hammer, a new 4 mana spell. This one deals 6 damage split among the lowest health enemies. So a lot of lowest health stuff here in Demon Hunter. In this case, we got kind of a fireball that can go face if that's the only enemy on board. Alternatively, if there are matched enemies, unlike some of the like deal 2 to the lowest health enemies, this is going to line up the damage cleanly. So if you have like a 1 health and then a 2 health and then a 3 health, it's going to line it up so it kills the 1 health, and then it's going to kill the 2 health and then the 3 health, basically, to make sure you've got kind of cleaner hits in this case with the more arcane missiles style of shot, which I think is definitely nice for this one. So you're not wasting that sort of leftover damage like you might in many other scenarios with those 2 health breakpoints in particular on similar style cards to this. Now that said, ultimately, this is 4 mana. That's just really expensive for 6 damage. If you're using it to clear a board, that's not going to feel great in most cases. Even if you're going face with it, that doesn't feel particularly efficient either. It's literally just fireball in that case, which isn't great. So is that extra flexibility here worth it for this cost? I don't think so. Demon Hunter is really good at killing people and killing things, and I just don't see why they need a 4 cost card for that. I think this actually looks fairly weak. And then next up here, we've got Pocket Sand, a 2 mana spell. This one will deal 3 damage and quick draw. Your opponent's next card costs 1 more. So whenever you play this immediately after drawing or adding it to your hand, then you're going to have a little bit of disruption here baked into your damage, which is nice. As always with quick draw, this is not going to hit all the time. I mean, Demon Hunter is a class with more draw, so you may be able to draw into these a bunch, just drawing a lot of cards, and you save yourself some mana and time, you're going to have your Pocket Sand go off. But ultimately, that 1 cost to a single card, it can be nice if you hit a really key turn, stop their Odin on turn 8 or whatever, but there are going to be many scenarios where that small tax doesn't feel great. Now that said, 2 mana deal 3 is fine. It's like you don't have to hit the quick draw to just be happy to be able to send some damage face. But again, Demon Hunter doesn't lack damage typically. So is this good enough to make the cut? Do they actually need this? Or will they just find other ways to do damage instead? Is this disruption potential worth it for quick draw? Because it's not going to hit often. It's most of the time just a 2 mana deal 3, and they have a lot of ways to do similar sorts of things. Moving on to the Bartendo Bot. This is the sickest card. It's like Metal Mechanical Robot Bob, #1. He kind of looks like almost too high tech for Hearthstone, but I'll take it. He is a 2 mana 3/1 mech with Battle Cry. Draw an Outcast card and slide it to the left side of your hand. That is such good flavor. He's sliding a drink to you across the bar. I love it, and I actually think this card's really good too. Just super cheap tutor card draw like this. Find exactly the card you're looking for and put it exactly where you need it to be, which is on that left hand side for your Outcast, so that your Outcast card is going to be active and ready to go. That just screams good card to me. It's doing everything you want it to do. Cheap and flexible, body on board, specific draw that you love, and activating the effect on that draw right away. A+ design, great flavor, and a very powerful card too. And then finally here we have the Midnight Wolf, a new 6 mana 6/6 beast with Rush and Outcast. Summon a copy of this. So if it's in the right spot here, you get 2 big old 6/6s with Rush, which does seem kind of insane in like Arena. Like, my god, that's a lot of just big immediate trading stats. I'm a little more concerned for this in Standard. Not that I don't think 2 6/6s with Rush is pretty solid on turn 6. That's actually still pretty good. It's more about the fact that I think the Outcast on this one could get a little bit clunky, and I just don't know exactly what kind of deck needs to run this or wants to run this. Maybe it's something you put at the bottom end of a Highlander deck just because you need a lot of cards, and this does sort of naturally filter itself towards an Outcast position as it gets stuck in hand turn after turn. But you also worry if you're running Outcast stuff and this is stuck in hand for the first 5 turns of the game, how much have you ruined your kind of Outcast package along the way? So, it's an Outcast card that's perhaps truly an Outcast, because I don't know if you want to run it with other Outcast stuff. There are some problems there. So, big piles of stat cards like this can often get left behind in favor of more synergistic packages of cheaper cards, and Demon Hunter in particular. Demon Hunter seems to struggle with really high cost stuff like this, especially like minion board based stuff too much. They like spamming spells and doing all this sneaky, crazy fast stuff, and I don't know how well this will fit into those game plans traditionally. So unless we see a little bit of a shift in how Demon Hunter is played, or this just barely makes the cut in Highlander, this card might have a little bit of a hard time, despite still being big old pile of good stuff. Gunslinger Kurtrus is a 3-star card. Fan the Hammer is a 2-star card. Pocket Sand is a 3-star card. Snake Eyes is a 3-star card. Load the Chamber is a 3-star card. Blind Eye Sharpshooter is a 4-star card. There we go. Oasis Outlaws is a 3-star card. Parched Desperado is a 4-star card. Bartindo Bot is a 4-star card. Midnight Wolf is a 2-star card. And there you go, folks. It wraps it up for this Demon Hunter review. I honestly don't play a lot of Demon Hunter. I feel like sometimes my assessments on Demon Hunter cards, I don't know what to make of these, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I definitely like a lot of the flavor for these, though. These are pretty interesting designs and some cool new mechanics, so more intrigued by these than normal for Demon Hunter. Excited to play these, even if I have no idea how good they're going to be. That said, thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for more reviews, and until next time, game on.